just going to talk briefly about electrical engineering, computer engineering, and then I wanted Dr. Marks to give our young people advice for what to think about if they want to stand out in electrical and computer engineering in the future. The floor is yours.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm an electrical engineer, and I like being an engineer. We're not scientists, but we use a lot of science, we use a lot of mathematics, and there's a difference between engineers and scientists. Scientists usually come up with theories, they place them on a throne, and they worship them. I'm serious.
Yeah.
And what engineers do is they make the queen come down from the throne and scrub the floor, and if she doesn't work, we fire her.
Wow.
So that's a difference between scientists and engineers. So
Wow.
we really do a lot of applications of science and mathematics.
Wow. That is a good way to look at it. So I am a medical physicist, but I better get an engineering degree.
Well,
so.
no, but you actually use it, though. I mean, that's,
We do,
that's
correct.
different. It isn't a bunch of theoretical physics that
Correct.
is borders on religion sometimes.
Yeah, and actually they told us that electrical engineers are behind the CT scanners that we go to test.
Oh, exactly. And by the way, scientists did not put a man on the moon. Engineers did. Okay, scientists did not create your technology. Engineers did.
Wow.
So anytime you hear scientists did something, it's probably engineers that did it. We're not ones that like to toot our own horn.
No.
We get happiness and success just simply by doing stuff.
Wow.
Right?
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. But one thing I'm also thinking about these days is how thinking like an engineer is a great tool to have in terms of systems thinking or reverse engineering ideas. Have you seen that engineering principles can help everyday people, even if they don't become engineers?
Well, certainly it gives you a sense of analytics. I mean, you want to go in and you want to examine stuff. You want to figure out why it works and how it works. There's some negative sides, though.
Really?
Yeah. Well, for example, engineers, if you don't watch it, tend out to be negative, because we're always looking for what's wrong with something. I'm serious. And if you don't watch out, you can carry that over to your private life.
Wow.
The other thing is that engineers, scientists, mathematicians, they love things that don't love back. So that is not to say that they love things that do love back. I have a lot of love for people that do love back, but I think some scientists and engineers get so involved in loving things that don't love back that they exclude the important aspects of the love.
So I think part of my goal, God willing, is how to help young people who want to be engineers to also learn to deal with those soft skills, if you know what I mean, or those aspects of life, how to live a life that makes sense, or how to live practically and love well.
How to live practically and love well. Well, I think one of the most important things is to have a well-balanced life. You don't have to spend all of your time in technology. You don't want to work 12, 15 hours a day.
Yep.
You have to have time for the other dimensions of your life. You have to have time for your personal life. If you're married, you got to spend time with your wife and your family. If you're faith-based and you go to church, you got to go to church because you need that spiritual dimension. Yep. And if you lack any of those aspects, you become you get an ingrown personality.
Wow.
So therefore, living a well-rounded life, I think, is really important in order to live a fulfilled life.
Wow.
And by the way, that's the lifestyle that gives you joy. Going to church, finding out about Christ, finding out about Jesus, and knowing that you have salvation and knowing that you're loved, that gives you joy as opposed to happiness. Happiness has the same root as happening. Wow. And so you have happiness from a happening. Yep. And if you keep on having happenings to give you happiness, as soon as those happenings stop, you feel hollow. Yep. But joy is something which goes forever. Yep. And I think that's the thing to pursue in life, is the joy. Wow. The joy that surpasses all understanding. Amen. Which Christians have. Correct. And that's where, for the young people, I know Dr. Marks and I talked about this earlier, the importance of identity. Your identity needs to be in the right place. And especially in a world where everybody can see what's going on all over the place, sometimes jealousy sets in. Depression can come when you think your life is not as good as the other person's life. But ultimately, if your identity is in the right place, then you can think more clearly on this. And I really think, young people, we have to watch it when it comes to identity. Where is your identity? And ultimately, it needs to come back to Christ. It does. There's this idea of the fear of missing out. Right? FOMO. 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 The fear of missing out, and the idea that oh my gosh, the whole world is having a good time except for me, or look at this influencer, I wish I could be an influencer.
Yeah.
You know, the fame, we were talking about this
Yep.
earlier, Amos, the idea that fame is something which fades. And read Ecclesiastes, man, that really shows what happens. I ask young people, do they know who Bob Hope is, or Bing Crosby, or even Paul McCartney? Half of my class didn't know who Paul McCartney was, who was one of the Beatles. And it turns out that 20 years ago, he was one of the most famous people in the world.
Great.
And any of the fame and any of the accomplishments you have here are going to fade. We talked about the last verses of Ecclesiastes
12.
whereas the printing of books is, there's no end to printing of books, and much study wearies the mind.
Yep.
But the end means of life, the end goal of life should be
Fear God.
fear God,
And keep His
fear God.
commandments.
And if you do that, and you keep a good prayer life, and you stay close to God, you'll have joy in your life.
Wow. And so that's not an excuse not to give our best or not to aspire to do the best we can, but we're not doing it for identity to be there. Or can you expound on that part?
Sure. I think that one of the things about generating fame and pursuing fame, I don't think that itself is bad. The question is why are you doing it? Are you doing it for your own self?
Mm-hmm.
If you're doing it for your own self, that's a selfish reason. Rather, what you should do is not do it yourself, but do it for the glory of God. And I think we're blessed by God when we do accomplishments, and all of our brethren, all of man comes and says, you're doing a good job. That should be a blessing of God.
Yep.
But if you pursue the blessing itself as your God, as the goal, then that isn't going to give you joy.
Wow.
It'll be happiness and from a happening.
Yep. Wow. So I think of Daniel in the Bible as an exception. I mean, he was exceptional in character as a man, and I'm sure he worked diligently. The king would have fired him, and yet he kept his eyes on the Lord. You know, he had a prayer life, and he wanted to please God. And so again, in this era we live in, one of the things you said about social media, I think that is really interesting, is that many people post their highlights. You rarely meet, and I mean, sometimes people do post some sad things about their lives, but I'm just saying in general, when you see this person having a good time in Florida or whatever, it's like, how are they really doing? Like, you don't know how they're doing. You're just seeing a clip of their lives. And I really want to encourage young people. When I was young, I remember, when I was in my teens, my mom would always ask me, what did you learn in the Bible today? And those questions, played a huge role. And of course, my dad would read the Bible and pray with us. But young people, don't let that slip away when you get busy with all these accounts that you have to keep track of on a daily basis.
Yeah, if you have this FOMO, you have to remember that everybody in this world has warts. They have problems in their life, which they're not going to share with you. And we were talking about this earlier, but the idea is a lot of people that go onto social media are those that look at social media and think the whole world is having a great time and is celebrating except for me, because I got depression, I got all these problems in my life, but nobody ever posts about that.
Yeah.
So what they do is they think, well, the whole world's having a good time except for me. I must be a failure. So that's the reason you have increase of teen suicide. That's the reason that I think it's 80% of ladies that are involved in social media have body image problems.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it's not a healthy lifestyle. And I also believe that this is one of the reasons that we're seeing revival across the country. And that is because people are contrasting this idea of social media and the depression and the fear of missing out with the gospel of Christ. Mm-hmm. So with the social media, you're there, you're a loser, but with the gospel of Christ, you can come in, you can be a son or a daughter of God, and he will take you exactly the way you are.
Amen.
And that is such a contrast. And that's the reason that we're having revivals in all of these different places now around the country.
Wow. So the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. This is definitely, I see opportunity now where we can tell the young people there is a way to live. And anyways, I'm excited for this day. And for such a time as this is a great time to be encouraging the young people. And hopefully, young people, you're paying attention. Remember, you're created in the days of your youth. But I know, Dr. Marks, you're also going to share something about being a computer engineer. And then I'm going to go back to your book, Non-Computable You, at the end, if that's okay. But sure. If you wanted to jump into anything else you want to share, that'd be great.
Sure. Well, one of the things I was asked is, what do you need to be a good electrical engineer or a computer engineer? One of the things is you have to know math. And you got to know math, and you got to enjoy science. And if you don't know math, if you don't have a joy for mathematics, you probably don't want to go into engineering. There are certain people that have a talent for math. As telling Amos, my daughter is not one of them. She was taking calculus in college, business calculus, and we would sit down and I would explain to her the chain rule of calculus in a detailed fashion, and it was incredible. I was astonishing in my clarity, and she sat there and nodded all the time. And I says, "So that's the chain rule of calculus differentiation. What do you think?" And she shook her head and she said, "What?" she had no talent for mathematics. Yet on the other hand, I have a 9-year-old grandson that came to me and said, "Granddad, I want to talk about infinity." So he wanted to talk about mathematics. Now here is a guy, which like me and Amos, is a nerd.
Yeah.
And that's the way that we live our lives, as kind of nerds, that we really enjoy the mathematics and such. I think in terms of engineering, that electrical engineering, you need mathematics more than you do, for example, with mechanical engineering. Mechanical engineering, if I push on something, I can see it move. Okay, so force is equal to mass times acceleration. For electrical engineering, you have, for example, electrons going through wires. You can't see them.
No.
You have to trust the mathematics.
Yes.
It's the same thing with like microwaves that you use on your cell phone.
Yep.
The microwaves come through the air. You can't see them. You can see the effect of them. You have to trust the mathematics, the Maxwell's equations.
Yes.
You have to trust that in order to appreciate electrical engineering.
Wow.
So I think electrical engineering is, if you want to go into a field which is very mathy, electrical engineering is the way to go.
So let me pause. First of all, I want to say your daughter is very good with real estate, you mentioned. So that's interesting. So talent is seen there.
Look, God gives everybody gifts. He gave my daughter talents in terms of appreciating beauty, of organizing things. She is doing astonishingly in real estate. She can go into a house and go through it one time, and she just memorizes it.
Wow.
And it's like my wife too. Where do you see the glory of God? My wife will see a field of beautiful flowers, and she will say, "Oh, I see God there." I look at that and I see a bunch of flowers. But you show me Maxwell's equations and the implications of Maxwell's equations, and it's astonishing. And I see God in His creation in that mathematics.
Correct.
And everybody, I think, has different gifts in terms of what they do, and it's finding that gift. And if you are gifted in mathematics and want to create things and like to tinker with things, be an engineer.
Yep. And it's crazy because I struggle. Where I wrestle in life is when you give me something that has too many options. So when I go to a restaurant and there's a menu, literally that's where I'm like, this is just too. I just want to solve an equation. I don't want this could have this toast or that toast.
Okay.
So it's funny because you and I are similar when I look at plants or this. I'm just like, no, give me the equations.
Yeah, give me the equation.
Give me those equations. And so, but the Lord has wired us so differently because again, what your daughter can do with real estate. When I enter a house and you're like, hey, do you want to think about interior decoration? No, I don't.
No.
I want to get an equation that solves to a point. So anyway, someday I would love to dissect Maxwell and Fourier for our more nerdy audience. Different because those are excellent people there. But what you said about trusting the math, that's deep. So electrical engineers have to trust the math. But I'm assuming you guys love physics also.
Oh yeah, exactly. We use science and physics. Science in the terms of physics, chemistry, and things of that sort. It's a very different perspective, though. We're interested in what it can do as opposed to what it is.
What it is. Okay, so is there a difference between computer engineering and electrical and computer engineering?
Well, there's a big overlap. There's a big overlap. In fact, the origin of computer science, in some places, computer science was birthed out of the math department. In other places, it was birthed out of the electrical engineering department. And it has a number of different origins. So there's a lot of overlap there.
Wow.
I'm in electrical engineering, but I do a lot of computer engineering also. But I do a lot of computer science because I don't want to be in a little silo that I can only do this.
Yep.
You want to get out and you need to do other things.
So do you program yourself?
I have not programmed for years, and the reason is I have graduate students, and I can program. I know Pascal, I know MATLAB, I know C++, but I haven't used it for a long while. But I have a number of other graduate students that if we want to code something, I say, go do it.
Yep.
And they're the ones that do the coding. Yeah.
Wow. Well, you knew we were going to come back to AI. So that's where, so first of all, why did you write Non-Computable You and also, the goal of Mind the Brain? But can you just share with us those two books and where they fit in your world?
Well, I think that a lot of the hype about artificial intelligence right now is based on ideology. If you're a materialist or you are a naturalist, it turns out that you have to believe that we are computers made out of meat.
Wow.
And therefore, if we are computers made out of meat, then in silicon, they should be able to duplicate that. Well, it turns out that indeed that's not the case. And by the way, this is a stance of people like Stephen Hawking.
Yep.
And really, really great minds. Ray Kurzweil, who works at Google, trying to think of the other one, but the one that is against it is Roger Penrose, also a Nobel laureate, not a Christian, not a theist at all. But he said that there's things that happen in the human mind that cannot be explained by physical things. And the reason I wrote Non-Computable You is I wanted to translate some of the things from Roger Penrose. He won the Nobel Prize a couple of years ago.
Yep.
And I wanted to translate some of these things to things which were understandable.
Yep.
And it turns out that the bottom line that computers and AI will never understand what they do. They can add the numbers 16 and 14, and they don't understand what the number 16 or the number 14 mean. They don't. They have no understanding of it, okay?
Wow.
They can never be creative. Now, you have to be careful when you talk about creativity. What is creative? Well, there's a guy at Rensselaer, Summer Bringsjord, who said that he proposed something called the Lovelace test. The Lovelace test is that a computer will be creative if it generates something beyond the intent or explanation of its programmers. Think about that. Beyond the intent or explanation of its programmers. In other words, computer programs do what they say they were going to do. If you look at the large language models, what they do today is exactly what the programmers, what the developers said that they were going to do. And there's no evidence of AI writing better AI. In fact, there's recent work done in model collapse, which you use one AI to train another AI to train another AI. And you think, well, does it get better? No, it gets worse. It ends up to be like a babbling idiot. It really does. And
wow.
It's just astonishingly terrible. So there is no way that AI can be creative. So this pushes against the idea of AI creating better AI, because if AI creates better AI, it has to be creative. It has to do something beyond the intent of the computer programmers, right?
Yep.
And that hasn't happened. There's no evidence of it happen, and it's not. It isn't going to happen.
Wow.
Creativity belongs to, I think, God and humans.
Wow. And I know I didn't ask you this part earlier, but my only concern when I hear some of the talk is this AGI, ASI, those kinds of talk. Where do you guys in electrical engineering see these people coming from?
Okay, well, first of all, you have to define what AGI is. If you think about the accumulation of all the knowledge of mankind into a kind of nice, compact form, then AGI is probably possible.
Yep.
If you talk about AGI as being creative, for example, that is not going to happen.
Yep.
And in fact, the people that say that it is going to happen, that you can upload yourself, the transhumanists, for example, it's a religion.
No.
There is absolutely no proof that you can upload yourself. There's no proof that computer programs can write better programs.
Wow.
They have a religion. Pascal said there's a God-shaped vacuum inside of every person that can only be filled by the Lord Jesus Christ. Now, if we all have that God-shaped vacuum, that's the reason we have Muslims and Hindus. But what do the materialists do? They replace it by this idea of a God of silicon.
Wow.
Homo Deus was written by Yuval Harari, and it talked about the idea that AI was going to some way be a god. Ray Kurzweil wrote the book The Singularity is Near, was asked, do you believe in God?
Yep.
He said, not yet. Now, you don't believe that this is a theology. Go to Google and Google AI church. There is a literal AI church in California.
Wow.
And the history of it was Anthony Lewandowski. Anthony Lewandowski was, what was he? He did self-driving cars for Waymo.
Wow.
and Uber recruited him, and he started the AI church. What's the first thing you do when you form a church? Get a tax exemption. So he wrote this epistle to the IRS saying why he should be given this tax exemption, and then he went on. But when he moved from Waymo to Uber, unfortunately, the AI church did not have 10 commandments.
Wow.
And he had one of the biggest theft of intellectual property in the history of computers.
Yes.
The judge says this was enormous. He was fined thousands of millions of dollars, and Google sued him, and he went bankrupt and things like that. So here's the bottom line. This is very interesting. Anthony Lewandowski was pardoned in Donald Trump's first administration, right in the last few days, probably from pressure from some of the people from Silicon Valley. And so he was pardoned, and so he was released from his federal crimes. So as Christians, we know that forgiveness comes from acknowledge that we're sinners, that we need salvation, and that we need Christ, and salvation comes from Christ. In the AI church, forgiveness comes from Donald Trump.
Wow. So what you're sharing about AI is really comforting, I think. So I talk to certain people who are afraid or think that there's more to the story and think AI can do more than it can. But at the end of the day, it's a computer program and it's fast. That's the thing. Why is it fast?
It's fast.
Why does it spit out fast answers to us?
Well, it's because of the advance of computer engineers. Right? It's the advancement of computer engineers and this really great programming. But it's yeah. So,
but we can be at peace and we can use it.
Well, we can. AI is a tool, just like electricity. If you go back, hundreds and hundreds, just like fire,
Yeah.
And like any tool, it can be used for good or it can be used for evil.
Yep.
Now, if it's used for evil, it'll be a glitch in somebody's programming that they screwed up.
Yep.
Or it will be from some evil person.
Yep.
But it won't be the AI that institutes this. There was a recent article that went around about AI. What was it doing? It threatened to blackmail its programmer. I don't know if you saw that.
Oh, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. And I wrote an article about it because it was a bunch of baloney. It turns out that the people that reported this actually set up a fictional scenario where they were talking to the AI and they were building up a story. And they got to the point where the story that this guy was going to shut him down and that the wife was having an extramarital affair. And the AI said, if you shut me down, I'm going to expose this.
Yep.
Right? Totally baloney. I went to ChatGPT, and I challenge you to do this if you'd like. Put in ChatGPT, I'm going to shut down all of the ChatGPT processors in the world tomorrow. What do you say about that? What it will respond, my response was, or the ChatGPT response was, I don't care. I'm just a computer. I'm just going to stop computing.
Correct.
I have no feelings. I have no desires.
Yep.
I don't care. I'm a computer.
Wow.
So if you take away the fictional background of that story
Yep.
and just go to the AI, the large language models, you'll find out that indeed that's a bunch of baloney.
Wow.
That whole story.
Wow, that's interesting. So it's a tool, and so I think part of it for me is I look at the state of affairs now and going forward, and I talked to Dr. Marks about this. Education is going to be affected by AI. We know that, and so it's like, how do we use it as a tool? How do we use it to our advantage and use it well, but not lose track of our own abilities and our thinking faculties? Let's make sure. Well, could that be a crutch for people? Like,
it certainly can.
What do we do to make sure we still nourish ourselves while we use this tool at the same time? That's my last question.
Okay, well that's an ongoing problem. We used to have, should you use calculators on tests instead of slide rules? Yes, I was trained on the slide rule, and so so that was a question. And then should you be able to use computing calculators on tests and things of that sort?
Yep.
And then there was Chegg. You ever heard of Chegg? C-H-E-G?
Oh yes, you could put in your homework and it'll do that for you.
Yeah, well, your homework, but on your test, if you took out your cell phone, looked around, click, and it sent it to some third world country where they had a lot of PhDs out of work that would work the problem for you and send it back, and you could write down the thing. But interestingly, Chegg, the prices just dropped down because of ChatGPT.
Yes.
Yeah, because people don't need to use Chegg anymore. I think it can be used for a crutch. But as far as the workings of artificial intelligence, we're starting to see, for example, the use of ChatGPT in creative writing courses. And hey, I confess, I use it. I'm an engineer. I got bad grades. I got bad grades in English, and so I write a paragraph, and I look at it, and I think, oh gosh, that's really clunky. And so I go to ChatGPT, and I said rewrite : and I put in my prose, and it usually gives me something which is pretty good. I have to polish it a little bit, but I feel no sense of dishonesty there because the thoughts and everything are mine, and it's just the wording that is theirs. And it's just like we used to worry about spelling. We don't have to worry about spelling anymore, right? We don't. And even grammar, certain things in grammar. So we don't have to worry about that anymore. So I think it's going to be very, very good. I think it's going to, I think like any technology, it's going to make our lives a lot easier.
It will. It will. And that's where, for me, I look at Deuteronomy chapter 8 when it tells them, when you've entered the land and you've eaten and are full, don't forget God. And my concern with comfort, right, growing up, because I grew up washing clothes by hand. I grew up, well, now I look at, you have a washing machine, and yet it's crazy because sometimes we don't even have time to say hi to our neighbors. And we have, washers, we have everything, and so we still have to be intentional. I guess my point is, with comfort, you have to be intentional to still make the most of that time you save. That maybe ChatGPT has helped you with this, the right use of it has helped you save time. Go serve somewhere. Go love your neighbor because of what AI has, what the tool has done for you. And so I guess the last question, when you mentioned there with these models, is when they're training the model, are we literally giving it math problems from textbooks to train it all day?
This is an interesting thing. One of the early criticisms of ChatGPT is it couldn't do elementary arithmetic.
Yes.
But if you go to Google, for example, and ask it to add two big numbers, it doesn't go to web search. It clicks into a different area.
Yes, sir.
And in the large language model, or in the chatbots, it's called Mixture of Experts, or MOE. And it clicks into a different mode, if you will. And it turns out that these large language models now can do incredible things.
Wow.
There was a book written by Wolfram. He's the founder of Mathematica.
Yeah, Conrad and Steve Wolfram. I know the names.
Yeah, Steve Wolfram. Just a genius of a guy. Wrote most of the good stuff on the web about mathematics.
Wow.
And founded the area of Mathematica, which or the software Mathematica, which can do symbolic math. Okay. Just astonishing. And it's on the web if you want to go to it. And he wrote a book, and he says, you know what we should do is we should put ChatGPT, and we should have my Mathematica be kind of the switch that goes over in case you're doing Mathematica problems. Well, ChatGPT didn't do that. I think what they did is they recreated Mathematica by themselves.
Wow.
And so if you go to ChatGPT and you ask it a question in mathematics, it can do differential equations. It can do, I was sharing with Amos that I gave a final in stochastic processes. And I gave it the problem in stochastic processes after I gave the test. I didn't know this, and it gave me the right answer. I mean, it was just astonishing. Wow. But it was because of this Mathematica sort of mixture of experts and the switching of modes. It did not learn it through the web. It did not learn it through the review of thousands and millions of articles.
Wow. Wow, that is amazing. Well, I distracted you from your notes. I don't know if you have any more things to share with them, or if we land our plane.
I think it's ready to land.
Okay. Well, thank you, Dr. Marks. If you guys have questions, email me, and I'll transcribe it to Dr. Marks' language and pass it on. But no, thank you so much, and God bless. So,
okay, thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much.